welcome to another one of our kind of wrap-up episodes here of Conversation with Dan.
And Jed.
And we are going to do our top 10 videos.
I like Adrian. I like Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4,
5. Yeah.
Okay.
We got a top 5 going there, yeah. Add the Creed movies in, and
I will break you.
they're working on 10.
You for it. No.
Goodness gracious. So I will say these are our top 10 conversations with Dan.
Okay.
But knowing what we were talking about, if we're going to kind of be building in some of the passage attacks and different other formats that we've done, there would be 3 passage attacks that would be part of this.
Okay.
And the bottom 3 conversations with Dan would be out. So there'd be a nice mix of them. And our actual top performing video that we've ever produced was a passage attack on Psalm 2. That one continues to get a ton of plays. So,
Interesting.
So just know that they are not included in this list, but we're aware of them, and that's been part of we know that they're very useful things, and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I'm going to tell you the title, how many views, when it was made, and give you a short description of it. And if you've got any remembrances or comments on it or whatever, and then a few of them I've kind of got some interesting facts about those videos. So here we go. Our number 1 conversation with Dan is, what is the history of the Church of Christ?
Really?
It has 13.9 thousand views, which is massive for us. I'll talk about what our normal views are later. And that was done in May of 2018. All right, so here was our lead-in for it. When exactly did the Church of Christ start? Has that particular name always existed above the door where Christians gathered? I've got a typo in this one. Got to fix that. Are people who go to the church or Church of Christ the only ones going to heaven? This is a long conversation, but a very important one. We must have been doing a lot of short episodes because all of our conversations were about this kind of 20, 30-minute link at some point. Please listen, look into the scriptures, and let us know your thoughts or follow-up questions. Interesting thing about this. Well, first off, do you have any thoughts or remembrances on this one?
A little bit. I remember a conversation like that, and I think we got a lot of conversations from people on the outside who really didn't understand, even though we explained. I'm sure we explained what we mean when we say the Church of Christ, and that it can be called by different names and all that kind of stuff. But I know that we got a lot of discussion from outside about that.
Yeah, I think that is a fair remembrance on your part, because this video is actually unlisted now. It is available through the playlists, or if you go searching for it in some different ways.
But it's unlisted because we got too much negative backfire from it from outside, and didn't feel like it was helpful for what we were trying to do.
Yes, and that's kind of the thing, is like you were saying, we were trying to talk about the Church of Christ writ large sort of idea, not the Church of Christ.
The biblical church.
Yeah, not the Restoration Movement Church of Christ sort of idea.
Well.
And is part of it.
And,
we were trying to talk about the church as a whole, and that was part of the difficulty, is most people came expecting one thing, and then they were fairly upset about that in some way.
They assumed some things from their expectations. But anyway, I understand. That's good.
So the interesting thing is we ended up doing a follow-up because of that. Based on the feedback, based on the comments, we did a part 2 specifically on the Restoration Movement Church of Christ. Who were the founders.
Like Campbell Stone and...
Yeah, all those different things. Kind of what has been the growth, how it started here in the United States, and all this other stuff. That video only got 1.3 thousand views. So... just as a nugget there was a desire for that, but it's much more fun to be angry about something,
not for us.
No, and so as you'll see, there's a couple of videos like this that, even though we went into it with good faith, for one reason or another, we didn't find it to be as useful long term.
Yep.
But this one is still available, just not in a really public way. But here we go, number 2, which I like that this one is one of our top ones. Why isn't the Bible in chronological order?
I love that video.
I do too. It has.
And we still need to talk about that.
Yeah, it has 9,500 views, and we did this one in November of 2018.
Yeah.
This one, it's phrased this way: If you have ever read the Bible and wondered why the books are ordered in the way they are, you aren't alone. So how did our English Bible get to be the way it is? Why can't it be in chronological order? When it really comes down to it, is there a good way to get a clear picture of the overall story of the Bible, which became a topic of another video?
There sure is.
Let's look into the history of the Bible and see how we can know its story.
Yeah. That was a really good one. I loved that video.
I do too. I've gone back to this video, and like I say, it spawned a couple of other what is the storyline of the Bible type videos and shorts. It actually is our, let's see.
In shorts, you say?
YouTube shorts, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
I got you.
In fact, it spawned our most popular short video that we've ever put out about how to follow the narrative of the Bible. This video has the most likes and the most reactions of any video we've ever produced.
That's the one where I said if you'll read Genesis, Exodus, Numbers.
Yeah, that was the short that came
Joshua,
kind of based off of
Samuel,
this.
Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have had tons of reaction to this, and it still has a 98.3 like rating, which
Isn't that something?
Is crazy.
Yeah.
But I think this one is probably the best example we have.
I don't even like you near 98.3.
Knew there was something coming. But it's like, I think this one accomplished our goal of putting out something that people want to know.
Very useful to them.
It's very practical, very useful.
In other words, if they're going to read through the Bible, this read through the Bible in a year thing.
Yeah.
I think it's much more productive spiritually for the person if they will read the Bible story in chronological order.
Yeah.
And then maybe come back and read some of the books that are related to the different parts of the story.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm still very proud of that episode.
Yeah,
I like that one a lot. It's probably one that we could go back and probably find plenty that we didn't even discuss time-wise or whatever in that one. All right, number 3, our third video from the top here. Do we go to heaven, paradise, or something else? Has 6,000 views, and we did this one in June of 2019. We received this question asking if heaven and earth will eventually be combined or if the afterlife will be a renewed earth. Specifically, we're asked to look at Romans 8, 19 through 23, and 2 Peter 3, 6 through 13. Through this conversation, we tried to cover the passages and give other foundational background to the conversation. This is a long one. It probably was. But it will benefit your thoughts and further questions if you listen to the whole thing. It's okay if you can't listen to it all at once.
I'm curious about the feedback. Did we get positive or negative feedback to that?
I think the feedback was majority positive, but fairly neutral in the long term. I think people watched this one and it was kind of like, okay, that's interesting. But there wasn't a lot of strong engagement one side or the other, if I can remember right.
But a lot of people must have watched it, though.
Yeah, I think this is one that it perpetually gets views, a few here and there, and so it's kind of stuck with things. There was never like a major spike that I can remember on that one. So then number 7. Why did I skip? I might want to turn onto the other side. We skipped a few.
Math is not your strong suit.
Number 4. Apparently turning pages is not my strong suit. Number 4, are crosses and pictures of Jesus idols? Now this one gets comments constantly of one way and another.
Las cruces y imágenes.
I'm always getting responses to this one pop up, but this was done in February of 2020, has 5.3 thousand views. So it's never had a massive push, but it's been consistent.
People keep going back to it.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I've got a note here. It has the most comments of any video currently available. Notice currently available. That's key for one of those. We all remember the golden calf and what happened to those that worshipped it, right? Well, around the same event, God told the people not to make any idols in any form to anything in heaven above or earth below. What does that mean when it comes to paintings of Jesus? What about hanging a cross in our home? Is it breaking God's law to use images of Jesus in teaching materials?
And I know we must have talked about the iconoclastic controversy.
We did.
Yeah.
And then I say, it seems to be a fairly open and shut conversation, but if we're honest with ourselves, there is a lot to wrestle with.
There sure is.
And I think that's kind of key with this one is there were several things we discussed, even related to like Bible classes and stuff, and children's materials and how we handle those sort of things that we kind of went, well, these are our general practices, but there wasn't a lot of, and we can say for certain, this is how it needs to be done, which I think leads to most of the comments that come in of, well, I've got a cross in my house, or I've got this picture, or I've done this thing, and obviously different religious backgrounds take very different views on all of this. So I think we did a pretty good job of providing a path without being too hardline one side or the other.
Yeah, but it was a good discussion.
I think so.
Yeah.
And like I say, still one that continues. Number 5, is weekly Lord's Supper necessary? 3.2 thousand views from August of 2018. Interesting, since I printed this, we got another comment that on the video like literally yesterday from after I printed this. And someone was like, no, this is a bunch of hogwash.
Really?
I was just like, oh, we haven't gotten a comment on this video in ages.
How about that?
But churches of Christ have traditionally taken part in what we call the Lord's Supper or communion every Sunday. Is this because it's commanded in Scripture or through example? You may have heard the suggestion that having it less often would make it more special. Does that feeling line up with Scripture?
And we had a really good scriptural discussion about that and brought in some historical references and other things.
Yeah, this is one of those like a scripture-packed video.
Yeah.
So lots of references. So kind of identifying when we were hoping these would be good study tools.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of us just talking about it, there's all the references in there that you could study out for yourself.
Absolutely. You should go look at that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. We've actually done probably 4 or 5 different episodes on different conversations about the Lord's Supper because it's important.
Yeah.
And people have a lot of questions about it. Number 6, does Satan answer prayers?
How about that?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Came from a person who sent us several questions throughout the years. And so it was a good one. Done in April of 2020.
I remember that.
2.9 thousand views. And it says, have you ever prayed for God's guidance in a situation and followed through only to find that the outcome is much worse than you expected? Was that Satan stealing the prayer or pushing you towards the wrong choice? It's a great question that led to more discussion on free will, God's plan, how the Spirit is at work within the individual. Follow along with Jed and Dan as they reach out with any further questions or comments you may have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember it.
Okay. Number 7. Where were the Christians before the Restoration?
Ooh, yeah.
Now, this was done in May of 2019. Now, let me remember, what was that date on the other one? So, this was almost a follow-up to some of the questions we had gotten
on the Church of Christ
on that
thing.
first one.
Yeah.
And I think this was, we had taken down that first video because it wasn't quite, but we knew that we wanted to cover some of that material again.
So some of the naysayers about the legitimately of saying that there's one church and everything is that, where was and their thinking is of a denomination. Mm-hmm. They say, where was the Church of Christ before Campbell and Stone and all these people,
Yeah.
And so we went back in history and talked about the Lord's church and how it existed in different ways and places.
Yeah, because there are some people that really are like, oh, the Christians just kind of disappeared, and then the Restoration happened, and suddenly Christians came back again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we had a look at that. It had 2.8 thousand views, so
good.
Nothing to scoff at. But again, we took a much less sensational, which we didn't think we were being sensational, but we put a little more specific title on this one.
And we had a lot of historical stuff in that.
Yeah. So this was done, like I said, May 2019.
So that came off of that one that we did that got the most views, and this one may have eventually too.
Yeah, we'll get to this next one here in a second. But just to tell you what was in this number 7 video, you might hear that Christ established his church at Pentecost, but then you might think about the modern Church of Christ, like name above the door, and it's associated with the Restoration movement. Does that mean that Christ's church didn't exist for a period of time? Have Christians been active since the Pentecost sermon? And if so, where were they?
That's good.
Yeah, so that was, like I say, a little more toned down, a little more focused on that specific subject. And then number 8, I'll hold my comments until I've kind of read through all of this, but here we go. Is the Church of Christ a cult? 2,500 views, December of 2020, and then I'll just read our description of it here. You might be surprised to know that our question is based on something that comes up regularly in our comment section. True. People ask if we are a cult. People accuse us of being a cult. Some people encourage others to leave the Church of Christ because they saw the congregation they were part of as a cult. We decided it was time to address the subject, and we fully expect to get follow-up questions, little did we know, and comments on our discussion. There is no way we could address all aspects on this topic, but we humbly attempted to give the conversation an honest and open start.
And we even talked, if I remember right, about how it can be a cult if we do things this way or this way.
Yeah. This was, We brought in
Not that the church itself is a cult, but people can do things that make them a cult.
like individual congregations can fall into certain traps, and we talked about
Absolutely
some of the things that can happen that would make you a cult or be cult-like. But we also tried to express very clearly how a church in and of itself, even though it has expectations and it has lifestyles and all this other stuff, is not a cult.
That's right.
We used some expert definitions to all of that. So we tried, actually did a fair bit of research on that one. That way it wasn't just us shooting from the hip, which was uncommon, especially in 2020. It's become a little more my norm to do some looking into things. But yes, tensions were running a little high at that point anyway. But when I'm reading back through this and I'm like, we expect follow-up and everything, little did we know.
Yeah.
Little did we know. This is the newest video on our top 10 list, so it shot up pretty quickly. But we had designed it to help people who were encountering this question. So like if we got the comment, how are we going to answer it? So if other people get the question, how are they going to answer it? But it did not reach that audience, or at least that audience wasn't as vocal. The audience that was very vocal and not always the nicest were the people that just truly believed and had already made a designation of the Church of Christ is a cult.
Were they a lot of people who had left the church, or what do you think?
A lot had left the church. A lot did not like church in general, and the Church of Christ just kind of exemplifies certain things. And so it turned into a long complaint board. And
so did we put it where that first one was, or not?
So this one is also unlisted. It's not completely out of circulation, but it's definitely put in a way that if someone wants to watch it, they can track it down through the playlist and that sort of thing. But it's not something that YouTube will recommend or show in the search and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Just because it wasn't being helpful in the way that we wanted it to be.
Right.
And if someone has if someone in Paducah wanted to have a discussion like this with us, obviously we would sit down and have that discussion.
Sure.
If they had a complaint about a congregation or about our congregation, we're going to sit down and handle that.
Right.
But obviously when that starts being nationwide, we're just wanting to complain about everything, we can't address them.
No, we don't want that kind of thing.
Like I understand there is real church hurt out there, but I can't fix everyone's individual thing, and to just have it be an open complaint board wasn't beneficial.
Okay.
So that was a difficult decision to make because I liked the material. We had spent some good time on it, but like I say, it just wasn't useful in the way that we wanted it to be.
That's good.
So that one's there. Now the next one was a major learning curve for us. Number 9 is cross-dressing a sin. 2.4 thousand views, January of 2019, and here's how we described it. Does the Bible talk about cross-dressing? Can we say that wearing a certain type of clothes is a sin? Jed and Dan have a very open conversation and try to be as practical as possible in addressing this question.
I don't like a lot of your socks.
I know, but there we go.
I even have names for Jed. I call him Preacher Jed, or Cowboy Jed, or Preppy Jed, depending on what he wears on a given day.
Oh, man.
All right.
I will say...
But he's not a cross-dresser.
No. Definitely, that should not be the message of the day there. So this one, I'll just say, is completely unavailable. Like, this one is an unlisted video.
Wow.
You cannot get to this one. I feel like I learned a lot from this one. In the way that we approached what we did moving forward. Like I say, this is 2019.
Yeah.
So and that's January. So we're less than 2 years. We're like a year and a half into this project.
Yeah.
And I think we were both very trepidatious about answering it.
Trepidatious, you say?
Yes. But we did it, and I thought we handled it, I would
tastefully.
I think tastefully.
And well.
Maybe a little dispassionately.
Yeah.
And because we didn't want it to come across as judgmental, we wanted to answer the question again using the scriptures that we have.
Right.
But I feel like we learned a lot, because then for people who struggle with it, or families who have had family members who struggled with it, some of the feedback we were getting was it came across a little harsh. Not that it was wrong, but it wasn't as gentle. It wasn't as understanding. Maybe we didn't have as much personal experience with it to try to
more
massage the answer.
empathetic.
Yeah, be more empathetic about it. So whatever it was, once we got it out there and we started receiving that feedback, it was like, okay, this one is almost hurtful being out there. The scriptures are still the scriptures. They say what they say. That is what it is. But in the way that we presented it, it wasn't the most useful.
And we really...
All right. So we just filled up the cards on our camera, but we wanted to finish up our top 10 video. So
and we're on number 10.
We are on number 10.
Well, what is it?
Okay, so like we said, we were finishing up number 9, and we are very careful about being empathetic with what we put out.
Yeah.
I think that experience made us a little more mindful about what we did moving forward.
We care how the material is perceived, and we want it to be biblical, but we also want it to be perceived as loving and kind.
Yeah. So that brings us to number 10. So number 10 was, where does the Bible talk about the immortal soul? We've gotten some really neat comments on this one from various spiritual type people. But anyway, this one had 2.2 thousand views, August of 2019. Are we just matter or a product of biology, or is there something more? And we talked a lot about the soul and the afterlife. It was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's one that it got a lot, and then it kind of leveled off over time. But that was a fun one. So that's our top 10.
Those are cool.
Yeah, it's fun to look through those sort of things. And like I say, there would be 3 passage attacks that would fit into that top 10 if we were to have all of that. Interesting overall facts. Many of our videos will top out at about 600 views. So like I said, we've never been a huge channel. We're very thankful for the people who watch, but these were the exceptions to the norm that really kind of went above for a variety of reasons.
What would you say makes up the largest population of our viewers?
I looked at this recently. I think we tend to have kind of 30 to 50-year-old men is our main section, which again...
But we've had a lot of questions from women as well.
We do. We have, like I say, I think that's our biggest, but I don't think it's like we're at 90-10 sort of thing. I would say that's probably a 35 to 40%, part of the demographic. And then, like you say, I think the next biggest, and not by a big difference, is probably women of variety of ages. But a lot of our questions do come from women.
Interesting.
Yeah. Most of our videos get about 300 views over time. We've done a lot of videos, so a lot of them kind of sit there unless they catch some strong second wind. And I'll just close out by saying, if you ever want that PDF, if you want the whole back catalog, they can always send us a message.
It really is a really good scriptural resource in discussing different things topically, and I think it will bless you in that way. And if you're working with people or reaching out to other people, and you feel like it would be good for them to listen to a conversation that is not you about this topic, I think you can use it that way, and people won't feel intimidated by jumping on YouTube and watching these.
Yeah, sometimes it's like when a parent has said something enough times, and suddenly someone else says it, and they're like, oh, there's this revelation. Sometimes a different voice helps.
Okay.
And that's what we hope this would be. So thanks again. We hope you'll join us in our new venture. So be checking out for information, help spread the word. And like I say, when we hit 1,000, we're going to plan on doing a live Q&A.
That sounds great.
So thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Bye.